So LeBron James and the LA Lakers win an NBA title. It's title number 17 for the Lakers, title number 4 for LeBron. Here's LBJ after the game talking about what he wants now after winning his 4th title.
It means a lot to represent this franchise. I told Jeannie when I came here that I was going to put this franchise back in a position where it belongs. Her late great father did it for so many years, and she just, took it on after that. And for me to be a part of such a historical franchise is it's an unbelievable feeling, not only for myself, but for my teammates, for the organization, for the coaches, for the trainers, everybody that's here. We just want our respect. Rob wants his respect. Coach Vogel wants his respect. Our organization wants their respect. Laker Nation wants their respect. And I want my damn respect, too.
I mean, look, it's a really good speech, and I guess that it's a great way to end. I was like, yeah. Who are the guys disrespecting LeBron James? Where's that? Like, we do this all the time in collegiate sports when you rank a team. Like, I'll never forget. So over the weekend, or last Friday maybe it was, Jeff Goodman had this piece about Greg Marshall, who's for now the coach of Wichita State, although I would guess that tenure is going to end sometime soon as they'll do an investigation. Anyway, like when Wichita State was undefeated and they got up for the whole regular season and in their conference tournament, that postseason, I didn't think they deserved a 1 seed because they hadn't played anybody. Like literally had played, I don't know, it was like 1 or 2 teams that even played in the NCAA tournament. And so my point then was like, okay, I think a lot of these teams would have gone undefeated if this was the schedule that they played. It's an impossible thing for you to measure up. I would have put them in a 2 or 3 seed category. Okay. And all I got was like, this is such disrespect. Look, there's 350 teams. And I'm saying maybe not one of the top 4, maybe you're like 5th through 9th. That's not disrespectful. It's the same thing with LeBron James. Like, look, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson saved the league. In the modern history of the sport, they belong in every conversation of top 10, top 5 player. Michael Jordan was the face of the league for over a decade. He won all 6 NBA finals that he was in. He is, by many people's estimation, the greatest of all time, whether modern or pre-modern era. I don't even want to bring in the Kareem and Shaq and Wilt and Jerry West and Bill Russell and none of those. Just in the guys that we've seen, Kobe Bryant's on that list, Shaquille O'Neal's on that list, Tim Duncan's on that list, right, of the all-time greats. Bird, Magic, Jordan, and LeBron is in any conversation, and many people are putting LeBron James as the best or the second best player of all time. So if there are 450 NBA players on Earth now, if there are 10,000 NBA players in the history of the sport, and he's considered somewhere between the best and the 5th to 7th best all time, right? How is that disrespectful? It's like it's just dumb. If you don't think he's the greatest of all time, you're a hater. Like, no, maybe you're just like, I think he's great, and I like this guy a little bit better. Just now, on one hand, don't discount this title. It means something. And I said this on the podcast, and I will say it now. We can go through a lot of NBA titles and point out the issues with the opponent that they played. Hey, LeBron's first title was against the Oklahoma City Thunder. That team was so not ready for the NBA Finals. Right? They kind of got embarrassed. KD was too early in his career. He didn't have enough strength. Russell Westbrook tried to force things and was awful early. James Harden kept going out. He was a waste of time in the series. Like it was an upset of the San Antonio Spurs. It was a down year for the LA Lakers, and they were able to skip a couple steps and get to the NBA Finals, which is kind of what happened here with the Miami Heat. Like, they're not one of the top 5 teams in the NBA. You can tell me they are, but they're not. Right? No one would take them ahead of the LA Clippers if they played right now in a series. Very few would take them, even though they beat Boston in the series. You replay that series. Look, they're rightful to be there as Eastern Conference champions. They didn't have to play the Bucks, and the Bucks have had a better record in the regular season, not postseason. But this was a favorable matchup for the Lakers. I'm not taking anything away from it. I'm just giving context to, hey, This is a little bit like San Antonio winning in lockout-shortened years. It still counts. Doesn't count as a half, doesn't count as two, just counts as a championship. Different, but a championship. It's a line on the resume. But let's also say that if it didn't change where you sit in terms of historic all-time LeBron, that doesn't make you a hater. That's not the way it's supposed to work. Look, there are LeBron haters, but not behind this microphone and not behind most microphones. Like, we just get to the point of ridiculousness. And I think that that's what LeBron is. He's reacting to the ridiculousness instead of, like, he's actually right. Pelinka gets no respect. Frank Vogel gets no respect. You know? I mean, how about Frank Vogel putting Caruso in the starting lineup for Game 6? What a difference. They got to a great start. They're unbelievable defensively. Why? Because he's the best defensive guard they have. And LeBron doesn't have to handle the ball nearly as much because he's probably the second best or best passer that they have. The Lakers lost to the Heat, and that was an unbelievable basketball game. Like, look, obviously what happens after Game 6, you're like, oh, yeah, the Heat aren't that good. And I don't think the Heat are nearly at the level of the Lakers. But Game 5 was just great sports, right? Like, fighting for their lives, dudes jumping up, knocking down shots, playing above their level. That was fun. And then Saturday we had the Red River Rivalry, which was a 4 overtime game on Fox. Amazing. Oklahoma ends up winning. And what felt like a third time they'd beaten Texas in the same day. We had that crazy Missouri LSU game that was moved because of the hurricane. Clemson flexed their muscles and dominated Miami. Then yesterday we had Dak get hurt. The Lakers win a championship. And all the other stuff. Alex Smith getting onto a football field. That was pretty amazing. So, but I think historically, the Lakers winning a championship is the biggest thing of the weekend. LeBron wins his 4th NBA title with his 3rd franchise. Let's just start with the whole, I hate the, no one's done this in his 17th year. Okay, that's because guys didn't come straight out of high school. And Michael Jordan retired for a year and a half and came back. At the same age, he was the best player on the NBA championship team, won on the road in Utah against 2 future Hall of Famers, the 2nd leading scorer in the history of the sport, and the all-time assist leader in the history of sport. Like, that's pretty good. It doesn't take, let's just contextualize it the right way. The Lakers, without their point guard, Avery Bradley, marched through the playoffs and lost 1 game up until the finals. They only lost 2. They didn't play against the best teams in the league in terms of record or prestige, but they did beat the tar out of anybody who was in their way, and they did it mostly with defense and with LeBron and Anthony Davis as the offense. With that, we welcome in Ric Bucher from Bleacher Report and Fox Sports 20. Joins us in the Doug Gottlieb Show on Fox Sports Radio. How would you contextualize LeBron James' 4th championship?
I thought it was impressive in that when I look at a guy who's 35 and almost 36 and was taking a bunch of disparate parts that pretty much the entire NBA universe thought was going to be the 4th or potentially 5th seed in the Western Conference, ended up having the number 1 record, overcoming a 3-month shutdown, going into the bubble and coming out on top. It's not as impressive, I would say, probably as going back to Cleveland and winning a championship, but it was a unique accomplishment in which LeBron drew on all of his assets and his strengths. And it's interesting, Doug, we just had a conversation on Speak for Yourself about the subject, sort of looking at what was the most impressive aspect of LeBron's winning this title, and it was a healthy, pleasant conversation. There wasn't a whole lot of debate or back and forth, but it was within the context of what he did under the circumstances. And when I look at what he did under the circumstances, I'm happy to talk about all of the things that he did that were impressive. It's, as you noted, when we start crossing eras and we try to inflate it with what it means compared to what somebody else did at some other time.
Yeah, it's silly.
That's where I think we get sideways. In the same way that we look at playing in the bubble, and we came into it thinking that it was like the most arduous, challenging, difficult thing that anybody has ever faced in the history of the NBA. And then you kind of get into it and you realize, you know what? It had its pluses and minuses, but there were some things that were benefits, and you're away from your family for a month. That's not fun to do, but after that, you could bring them in, and you could do a lot of things inside the bubble that people can't do on the outside. And so I think if we keep the microscope or the magnifying glass tight enough, I think we can find common ground on. LeBron was extremely impressive in getting this done,
right.
But you want to give it some added heft. That's where you start to lose me.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was thinking about this. Wait, and we think, well, nobody could have done that in the bubble. Like, wait, so they could play cards every night and they could play golf every day. Michael Jordan would have been great. He would have been fine. He probably would have tired of that golf course, but he would have been fine.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing: like the guys that I know during the finals, they try to stay away from their family. Like they tell the wife or whoever is kind of in charge of the home front, look, you got to take care of everything because I got to get locked in. And sure, you love being, having a little bit of time to divert your attention from the job at hand, but there's also, great value, and guys do it all the time where it's like, hey, this is my focus. I'm basically battening down the hatches. And look, it was a month that they had to go without family. As one player told me, the greatest challenge in that, aside from if you have young kids, you hate spending any time away from them, but that it was more like they were inside the bubble and they knew they were safe, but you're removed and you're wondering what's going on with your family on the outside and are they safe? Look, I totally get that. And I'm not suggesting that they had it easy in the bubble and there's a difference. It's just this idea that somehow they were under these extreme conditions because they were in the Magic Kingdom. You got to miss me on that, because I know too many people that are struggling mightily.
Yeah.
And look at what life was like inside the bubble, and they're like, you know what? Sign me up for that.
Clippers haven't hired a coach yet. Why?
Yeah. I hate to say it, but I have not been keeping my eye on that ball. I honestly, I couldn't tell you. I can't tell you. I wish I had an answer for you.
It's just interesting though. Like, right? Like you would think, all right, if you make that sort of move, you might want to have your eye on somebody. Yeah. And it does. It's interesting that Ty Lue is out there, interviewed with other teams, hasn't taken the job. Probably means he hasn't been offered the job. Does that mean does Jeff Van Gundy start coaching again?
Yeah, look, I have a hard time believing that we're going to see Jeff or Mark jump into one of those seats. It's an intriguing question, but I one of the elements that's going on right now is the question of, and this is where Doc Rivers, once again, he and his agent show their brilliance.
Yes.
But people are kind of trying to figure out, like, what do we have coming in, and how much do we want to spend, and I'm sure that in much the same way the Billy Donovan situation in Oklahoma City, word is they made an offer. It wasn't an offer that knocked him over, but I from everything that I'm hearing, that's part of the equation here, is that outside of Doc getting I don't want to say bamboozled Philadelphia, but man, he struck while the iron was hot. And
got a 5 year, got a five more years.
Yeah, and if anybody thinks that wasn't set up before he said officially sayonara to the Clippers, doesn't know how the business works. Because
yeah, I
guarantee you, the second that that was open, he was looking at that saying, I know my days are numbered here. Let me see if I can get another big piece of the cherry.
But some of that dialing back of the money, I'm hearing at the worldwide leader, it wouldn't surprise me if Van Gundy.
And the same thing's happening there.
Yeah.
No, that's. I've heard some of the same things.
This was LeBron after the game.
It means a lot to represent this franchise. I told Jeannie when I came here that I was going to put this franchise back in a position where it belongs. Her late great father did it for so many years, and she just, took it on after that. And for me to be a part of such a historical franchise is it's an unbelievable feeling, not only for myself, but for my teammates, for the organization, for the coaches, for the trainers, everybody that's here. We just want our respect. Rob wants his respect. Coach Vogel wants his respect. Our organization wants their respect. Laker Nation wants their respect. And I want my damn respect too.
We do this thing, and it's not all LeBron's fault. Some of it's how it's on social media and on media. But has anybody actually ever disrespected LeBron James?
Boy, disrespected him. I don't know if it's disrespected him. I would say it's not given him the respect that he obviously thinks that he deserves. And what's curious about that is people would say the same thing about Kobe Bryant. There was a time where they would say that about Michael Jordan. But I don't remember those guys ever acknowledging the doubters. And that's something that LeBron has in common with Kevin Durant, in that they acknowledge that people not everybody is in love with them. Not everybody thinks they're the greatest ever, and which is fine. But the reality is, everybody, no matter what level of success they have, they face that. There's somebody who doesn't believe in them. There's somebody who thinks they're overrated. That is life. And the fact that LeBron is still holding on to that's the thing about LeBron. Like LeBron will say on one hand, I don't have anything left to prove.
Right.
And on the other hand, say, okay, now are you going to give me my respect? So there, quite clearly, you thought you still had something to prove to somebody. And I'm okay, whichever way you want to go, just pick a lane. Just be one or the other. Feel like I'm always doubted and I've always got to prove myself and I don't know if this is ever going to end. And just, play that song. Go that direction. Or go, you know what? I'm my biggest critic. I'm the one who has to prove something to myself. I don't really care what anybody else says. My standards are my bar. But do one or the other. Don't keep jumping back and forth depending on what day it is.
Buke, great stuff as always, my man. Thanks so much for joining us.